I think that you have to be curious and a kind of a good information gatherer, good listener, because that's the most important thing early on. The This is an analogy that I've heard more when it comes to like sales reps when they're talking to their customers and need to really dig down to figure out their pain points. But I think it applies to a coach as well. But you need to be like a doctor. So when you go into the doctor's office and you're like, hey, doctor, I have a sore knee or whatever the thing is, the doctor doesn't just go like, okay, great, you need to do this. Here's some medicine. They like have to figure out what's wrong because there's 1,000 things that could be making your knee hurt. And so they're always going to ask you those other questions like, when did it start hurting? Or like, where exactly does it hurt? Move this, whatever. So you've got to diagnose like a doctor before you can actually prescribe the medicine or whatever. So it's the same thing when we're getting to know a customer, getting to know a client, getting to know their sales process, their history with outbound, their goals, where they want to go, figuring out, how much they're spending on outbound. So how much they should be spending and what their average deal size should be. All these things need to be ironed out before you can build the whole playbook. Because playbooks aren't one size fits all. So being curious, being able to ask the right questions, listen, not kind of have your own agenda, but really drill down to understand the company first and foremost before you kind of take direction, set off in your own direction is super important. And then after that, just being confident in what you recommend. I mean, when you're a sales coach, you'll be a sales coach because you've got experience in sales and you know what you're talking about. And I'm sure you'll have a bunch of resources and support behind you in that role, as I do in mine. So when you're sharing the information with your clients, you've got to be confident. A lot of times people come to us because they want guidance. They want somebody to be able to say like, hey, we've done this before. We know what works and what doesn't. This is what you should do next. And being kind of vague or not just taking a solid stand is going to be really, really tough when you're building a sales development function or outbound function. And we know that it is an iterative process. So nobody, including the best sales coach in the world, is going to pick the right messaging or the perfect subject line or whatever first try. You've got to just, based on a really educated guess, based on all your research, based on all your work, based on what you know works and what doesn't in other markets, you make your first attempt and then you iterate and you experiment from there. So being confident, just making a choice and sticking with it and gathering the data, and then going ahead and making your next choice and your next choice is a super important characteristic or quality for a sales coach. And then it's always staying that same curiosity that you have at the beginning. You've got to keep it the whole time because markets change, job functions change. Even when we're looking back at things like COVID, obviously something like that is massive, but it absolutely shook up most markets in the world and changed the way people do business, changed the budgets that certain types of companies had available. All those types of things are going to have an impact on who you're prospecting, why you're prospecting them, the pains that they have, all those things. So there's like smaller versions of that type of big shakeup that happen in every market all the time. And so you've got to have your ear to the ground and know what those are so that you can bring that back into your prospecting strategy, into your sales playbook, and make sure that you are ahead of those things instead of being kind of behind and looking like you don't know what's going on in the market.